Hello everyone. Today we will look on the digital camera settings for beginners and see how the basic setting will allow for better picture and video. The best manual settings for a digital camera will depend on the specific camera model, the shooting conditions, and the desired outcome. However, here are some basic settings that can help you take control of your digital camera and achieve great results. 1. Shutter speed. Adjusting the shutter speed allows you to control the amount of time the camera's sensor is exposed to light. A faster shutter speed, example 1/1000th of a second, freezes motion and is suitable for capturing fast-action subjects. A slower shutter speed, example 1/30th of a second, creates motion blur and is useful for capturing subjects with intentional motion or low-light situations. Experiment with different shutter speeds to achieve the desired effect. 2. Aperture. Aperture refers to the size of the camera's lens opening. It controls the amount of light entering the camera and affects the depth of field, the area of the image that appears in focus. A wider aperture, example f/1.8, creates a shallow depth of field, blurring the background and isolating the subject. A smaller aperture, example f/16, increases the depth of field, keeping more of the scene in focus. Adjust the aperture based on your desired level of background blur and the amount of light available. 3. ISO sensitivity. ISO measures the camera's sensitivity to light. A lower ISO setting, example ISO 100, is ideal for bright, well-lit conditions, while a higher ISO setting, example ISO 1600, is useful in low-light situations. However, higher ISO values can introduce digital noise into the image. Find a balance between ISO sensitivity and image quality based on the available light and desired image outcome. 4. White balance. White balance adjusts the color temperature of the image to compensate for different lighting conditions. Use the camera's white balance presets, such as daylight, cloudy, tungsten, etc., or set a custom white balance based on the lighting in your scene. This ensures accurate color representation in your photos. 5. Metering mode. Metering determines how the camera measures the exposure. The most common metering modes are evaluative/matrix, center-weighted, and spot metering. Evaluative/matrix metering takes into account the entire scene, center-weighted metering prioritizes the center of the frame, and spot metering measures exposure for a small spot in the frame. Choose the metering mode that suits your subject and the lighting conditions. 6. Focus mode. Select the appropriate focus mode based on your subject and shooting conditions. Options usually include single autofocus, AFS, continuous autofocus, AFC, and manual focus. Single autofocus is useful for stationary subjects, continuous autofocus is suitable for moving subjects, and manual focus allows you full control over the focus point. Let us look at some suggested digital camera settings for different shooting situations, including recommended shutter speed, ISO, and aperture settings. 1. Portraits, outdoor. Shutter speed. 1/125th to 1/250th of a second to freeze any potential subject movement. ISO. Start around ISO 100 to 200 for optimal image quality. Adjust as needed based on lighting conditions. Aperture. Choose a wide aperture, smaller f number, such as f/1.8 to f/5.6 for a shallow depth of field and to create a pleasing background blur, bokeh. Adjust as desired for the desired level of background blur and exposure. 2. Landscape photography. Shutter speed. Use a tripod for stability and set the shutter speed to achieve the desired effect. Slower speeds, such as 1/10th to a few seconds, can create motion blur in water or clouds. Faster speeds, such as 1/250th to freeze motion, may be needed for capturing moving subjects within the scene. ISO. Start with a low ISO setting, such as ISO 100 or 200, for optimal image quality. Adjust as needed based on the available light. Aperture. Use a smaller aperture, larger f-number, like f/8 to f/16 for maximum depth of field, ensuring that the entire scene from foreground to background is in focus. 3. Action photography, sports, wildlife. Shutter speed. Use fast shutter speeds to freeze action. Start around 1/500th to 1/1000th of a second, or even higher if needed, to capture sharp images of moving subjects. ISO. Increase the ISO to achieve a faster shutter speed while maintaining proper exposure. Start with ISO 400 to 800 and adjust as needed for the lighting conditions. Aperture. Choose a wider aperture, smaller f-number, like f/2.8 to f/5.6 to let in more light and create a shallow depth of field. Adjust as needed based on the desired background blur and lighting conditions. 4. Low light or night photography. Shutter speed. Longer exposures are often required in low light situations. Use a tripod or other stabilizing techniques to avoid camera shake. Experiment with shutter speeds ranging from a few seconds to several seconds or even longer, depending on the available light and desired effect. ISO. Increase the ISO sensitivity to capture more light. Start with ISO 8001600 and adjust as needed to balance exposure and noise. Aperture. Choose a wide aperture, smaller f-number, such as f/1.8 to f/2.8 to maximize the amount of light entering the camera and achieve a shallow depth of field. These settings are general guidelines, and you may need to adjust them based on your specific camera model, lighting conditions, and desired creative effects. It's always a good idea to experiment with different settings and review your results to find the optimal combination for the situation at hand. Thanks for watching and happy shooting!